are back in the studio. I am Bruce Reilly, aka DJ Bruja, Deputy Director here at Voters Organized to Educate. And today on Change the Change, we have a special guest. We have Mr. Shaun Mean.
Hi, how's everybody doing out there?
And he's running for District 23 in the runoff to be a state representative. So how about just tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in this race, and then we can kind of go from there.
Awesome. Well, once again, my name is Shaun Mean. I'm a lifelong resident of District 23, having grown up in Mid-City. Back then, we just called it the 5th Ward. And was born in that district. My parents actually moved there in 1987. Previously, they lived in New York, where my older brother was born. And previous to that, they actually immigrated to America from Honduras in like 1967. So grew up in the area, graduated from Warren Easton, and then went off to LSU and completed my undergraduate degree in political science. And then I was fortunate enough to get a internship with then Governor Kathleen Babineau Blanco. So that was a great experience. And then I was able to work my way up and actually become a policy analyst. So I became a full-time employee with Governor Blanco. So after that experience, I ended up working for the Louisiana Housing Finance Agency, working as a housing finance specialist. So basically, I was just working, trying to find innovative solutions to our housing stock issues throughout the state. Eventually, I moved on and then started working for the Louisiana Board of Regents, which oversees higher education policy throughout the state. Stayed there, and during that time, I actually started the part-time evening program at Southern University. So I started going to school in the evening while I was still working during the day. So that took 4 years. I eventually graduated, and right before graduation, I actually got a chance to work with U.S. Senator Mary Landrieu up there in D.C. as well. So I was working on issues related to the BP oil spill at that time. So eventually graduated from law school, moved back down to New Orleans, and then I worked for a law firm, Brown Greer, that was dedicated to making sure that businesses, small businesses that were negatively affected by the BP oil spill could be made economically whole. So that was a great experience. Took the bar exam a few times, but we can get into that story later. And then eventually passed, and I've been in private practice ever since. Why I'm running is because I truly believe that my legislative experience, having worked on the state level for a governor and also the federal level for a U.S. senator, makes me uniquely positioned to be the most effective advocate for my neighbors in District 23, and also my communal knowledge as well, because as I stated, I have been a resident in that district my entire life, from the 5th Ward to Mid-City to Faubourg St. John. These are all neighborhoods that I traverse every day because, these are my neighbors. So I relish the opportunity to potentially represent my neighbors.
Okay, and I appreciate you bringing up Mid-City in the neighborhood. Excuse me. I just read this morning randomly that the New York Times labeled Mid-City as like the 7th greatest or coolest or somethingest neighborhood in America, and I was just thinking, like, is that a neighborhood? So how would you describe maybe the overlap of Mid-City, District 23, and neighborhoods as we know them? Give us a little sense of the geography.
So let's say at the furthermost east of the district is the 7th Ward. So the district expires at around St. Bernard. So basically, if you're out there, you know what Popeyes is, that's where it stops. And then it comes back and encompasses the entire Mid-City area. And then it travels up Carrollton, so it'll have Holly Grove and Gerttown as well. And then the district expires at Carrollton and Claiborne. So major streets in the district, of course, Carrollton, Canal Street, Broad, Tulane, Esplanade as well.
Okay, so it's a pretty wide sort of stretch, and those of us that work on redistricting and understand districts understand that New Orleans area gained population and was going to get a district, and B, it made sense that it would be some curvature of mid-city, and then all the ones that were touching it previously would kind of like give a little ground, right? And so I just wanted to clear that up for people that might have thought that any one representative sort of like drew a district to make it better for them or worse for them.
No, not at all. Because I think it's a combination of 3 former districts. So Representative Willard, Representative Landry, and Representative Knox. So they all gave up a little bit to create this brand new district, which is great for us because we lost about 7 to 8 districts post-Katrina after the 2010 census and the 2011 redistricting experience. So at least we're gaining 1 back, but we still have a lot more to go.
Yeah. So let's, and as Mid-City is a space that seems to, at least to me, it seems to be one of the spaces in New Orleans that has maybe the most change, right? There's this new development here, there's this new business here, or whatever. The hospitals are maybe a little bit south of your district, but like there's a lot kind of going on. And we know that housing is a huge issue, and you mentioned your experience in housing. So can you talk a little about like the housing issues in Mid-City and what you see as the reasonable future and how people might be able to impact that future?
Easy. The biggest thing is affordability. A lot of longtime residents are being priced out of the area. And, it's harder for even us who have been in the area since 1987 to be able to afford to stay there. I mean, there's a longtime senator, this isn't particular to Mid-City, but that senator can't even afford to stay in their house anymore. And they've lived in that house since the 1950s. So we have to get this insurance problem together. We have to create affordability and more competition in the market as well. So because this doesn't just affect owners, it affects the high multitude of renters that we have in the city as well. So the renters are being, their prices are being, their rents are being increased monthly just because of the additional costs that homeowners are taking on. So we need to do something to address affordability because the makeup of Mid-City and a lot of these areas that are in House District 23 are changing, unfortunately, and we're losing kind of the soul of New Orleans because New Orleanians can't afford to live here anymore.
And what effect do you think that short-term rentals has had on the issue of housing affordability?
Major. And it's unfortunate, and we need to, and I know our city council is working on that because from what I'm hearing, they may do an outright ban, but we need to find out some kind of system to make sure that, yes, people who own their homes should be able to make some money because with our insurance crisis right now, folks need every additional dollar that they can get. But there shouldn't be folks coming from out of town just buying up properties who don't even live here, just creating this Airbnb crisis that we have. So I say, yes, homeowners who actually live in the space, they deserve to be able to supplement their income. But these LLCs that are just being created just to own property, just to make a dollar, I don't agree with that at all.
And, and I have to confess to being maybe part of the problem in the beginning, not in that type of way, but so when I was in law school and I wasn't really working and I was like kind of really struggling to get by on like loans and little like odd incomes, and I had a daughter at the time lived far away. And so, but I could go visit her and rent out my place. So it was like a whole home rental, but it was like this little swap. And I was like, it was working for me, and then other times when times were really tight, I would either stay at someone else's place or even at a Motel 6 and rent my place for more.
Wow.
And kind of split the difference. And for a while, I thought like, well, that's what Airbnb is for, right? That was the design. And I only heard about it previously from someone I knew in New York who was kind of doing that same thing, like with a spare bedroom he had. And he had like crazy New York City rent.
Right.
And so, that was I think the initial design. And then it was like later on, as you're saying, these people are just buying houses and turning them into hotels.
Right.
And so.
And that just kills the neighborhood characteristics that we have. Like, look at what's going on in Treme. It's pretty much a ghost town when you drive through there. And that is literally the soul of Black New Orleans. And it should not be a ghost town. It deserves to be a vibrant place where the culture of New Orleans still gets to strive and survive.
Well, one of the exciting things on that tip is, I think it was just last night, because I drive through the Treme in and out every day because I live on the other side of the Treme in the quarter. And the African American Museum is now kind of like opened up, and everything like in their yard was like kind of lit up and had this cool display. So it's good to see some things are really kind of catching on and getting hold at a time when we need it most.
Exactly. New development is important, and that's really one of my big things is economic development within House District 23 as well. Because if you look at, and we'll talk about crime, I'm sure, a little bit later, but if you look at the crime issues we have, it's not a lot of violent crime. What we have is a lot of property crime. And why that comes about is because people are hurting. So we need to figure out ways to get new jobs to people, get new industries into the district, into the city as a whole, so that folks know that they have opportunities besides just breaking into your window or my window. So we have to create a system in society that folks don't feel hopelessness in.
Yeah, I think we're just talking about that this morning with people on staff here, because we're talking about, obviously everyone knows Jason Williams, the DA, got carjacked. This man apparently may have burned down his house and killed his own kids. Meanwhile, you have people in Palestine and Gaza who are hopeless as well and lashing out, and then getting the counterattack and. But it all starts with that sense of like, I've just lost it and I don't care anymore and I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And for those of us that have ever been in that situation, that's when you're most dangerous.
Exactly.
And so what can we do for the people of Louisiana? Because it's not just a New Orleans thing. Crime rates are high in small towns, and they just don't talk about it because it's a high crime rate, but maybe not a high whole number, because there's only 1,500 people in the town. Right? But how do we try to impact that hopelessness that young people have here in Louisiana?
I come from a neighborhood where that hopelessness was very prevalent, because I grew up in New Orleans when we were murder capital of the world. And a lot of my friends, when we were teenagers, they ended up going and straying the wrong way, unfortunately. And there were times where, I was just like, I just want a pair of Jordans and a gold chain. I would love to have that. What would I need to do to get that? And, I just knew with my background, thankfully my father and mother were there, and, just other positive people that were in my life, that was not the way to go. And I needed to understand that delayed gratification is the thing. So when I made that decision when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I figured I'd go to college and then get a good job after that. But I didn't realize it would be a whole 20-year journey just to get to
the long game can be long.
Exactly. Just to get to a point where, I feel financially stable. But, that is the journey. And I believe it's up to folks like me and you and everybody in Vote to kind of talk about our experiences, to show that if you feel hopeless today, you don't have to believe that you're in a hopeless situation forever. Yes, you're going to have to work a lot harder than kids that live on St. Charles. Yes, you're going to have to study a lot harder. You're going to have to go through a lot of stuff just to make it. But it is possible. So, and once again, I'm going to keep harping on economic opportunity. That has to be equal economic opportunity. So we have to make sure that the people who are really living below the poverty level have a shot at creating businesses or have a shot at getting these jobs that we want to attract to our state and the district as a whole.
And what do you think about, because sometimes the math doesn't work out, right? Like, if we all had PhDs, we still would have some unemployment. And, with technology moving in and I mean, when was the last time you self-checkout? You know what I mean? Like, now it's all like, or between Amazon ordering it and it just arrives for you, or you go down to the CVS or Walmart and you're doing all the work for yourself. Right. I mean, I love the people that are like, look, if you're forcing me to work there, and without any training, well, you don't get to look and see whether I did a good job checking out. That's the cost of your choices. But the point being, like, for public safety and stability, and even for those businesses that are operating, to have it move smoothly as a society, we may need more social programs. Now, I know that sounds very anti-Republican,
right.
Which is our state sort of dominance here, and maybe socialist or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could talk a little about the value of, like Social Security was created because they were tired of seeing old people protesting outside the White House and camping on the lawn.
Right.
So, what is it that we can do in this state, which is very deeply kind of every man for himself kind of attitude? What can we do to help people out in a way where we just acknowledge that not everybody's going to have a job?
Mm-hmm. And I think we can look at models because, and I may be getting the city wrong, but there was a mayor, maybe in Carson, California, I can't remember, that implemented a program where basically everybody in the city or certain
like
folks.
Universal Basic Income?
Yeah, UBI.
Yeah.
So I think we should trial something like that in the city just to see if that will kind of ameliorate the crime issues and societal issues that we have. Mm-hmm. Because as we move towards our automation and folks not having opportunities to have jobs, we're going to be leaving a lot of our fellow citizens behind. Mm-hmm. And what are we going to, we have to think about them. We have to.
Yeah.
Because you can't say, I'm not worried about that subsect of people and then still have the nerve to complain about crime, mm-hmm. or still have the nerve to complain about houselessness, mm-hmm. or all these things. It all affects us. I don't care if you're in a mansion or you're in, I don't think they call them projects anymore, or whatever those things are called now. Mm-hmm. It all affects us. So we have to start thinking in a universal manner. It's not individualism anymore.
Yeah.
It's about universalism.
Yeah, we've got the Super Bowl coming, and so a lot of people have this idea of let's sweep all of our dirty clothes and everything else under the bed, because mom's coming, and
right.
we got a clean room or whatever. But, to the point a lot of people have is sweep people where? They were talking about people. We can clean up roads and buildings and things like that. But we have people that have nowhere to go. What do you propose? And I think that from what we see is a lack of vision, right. And it starts there. And then a lack of sort of political will. And then you get into the sort of dysfunction. And you're just well, can we get some people with big, bold ideas that inspire people to come along?
Right.
We've got some well, let me back up for a moment and just say, if you were to win, you're going into a legislature that has a Republican supermajority, has a Republican governor, mm-hmm. who has at times been the sort of most outspoken, perhaps, conscience of that party in the state. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure a lot of the things that he wants to get done will get done, right. without resistance from, enough people to stop it. So if you were to go in there and, and some of the things that might harm folks, particularly poor folks, people of color, LGBTQ people, how would you handle that in the legislature as someone who technically your vote doesn't matter?
Right.
So what would you do while there to matter?
And then I think that's where my experience up there at the state legislature monitoring sessions really kicks in, because I'm fully aware that even without them having a supermajority, there was a lot of anti-New Orleans sentiment out there. Mm-hmm. So my big thing is to make sure that we, as a minority party, are still a voice. Mm-hmm. We have to call those folks out when they're doing things to harm us, mm-hmm. because it's not right. You can't praise a God and then want to harm people. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make sense to me. So we have to preach from that bully pulpit of humanism, of peace, of love. Mm-hmm. And that's what I plan to do every day. Mm-hmm. And I really want to meet, and it may sound crazy, but J.P. Morrell, when I talked to him, he agreed with me. I'm going to have lunch with every single one of my colleagues, mm-hmm. lunch or dinner, so that I can look them in the eye and let them know about the issues that our people are truly having down here in District 23 and New Orleans as a whole, so that they can put a human face to that struggle, so that they can put a human face to that bill that they're going to be proposing that's going to hurt my family, your family, or anybody else's family. This isn't just a piece of parchment paper. These are real lives. And I'm going to go up there and fight for those real lives every day.
Appreciate that. And I wonder, if we can get them to understand. I'm sure they understand to a degree, but in the way that you're talking about, we're the cash cow for the state. And so like, you want to both kill the golden goose, put a noose on the golden goose. You want to what do you want to do to the golden goose? You want more money out of the golden goose, but you're trying to push it down in some way. And I mean, once you militarize New Orleans, you think everyone wants to have their wedding here anymore?
Not at all.
You think all the conventions are going to come if you do some don't say gay across all the schools?
And that's what I was going to say. We're playing with fire when we pass these anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, because we're going to have big events that won't want to come here anymore.
The NBA All-Star game
pulled out of Charlotte.
And then they play here because they pulled out of there, of all things.
Exactly. So why are we going to do that to our citizens? It just doesn't make sense. If you're about being fiscally conservative, if you're about getting as much money into our state, then don't pass bills that will negatively affect our bottom line.
And constantly talking about how dangerous New Orleans is. At the same time you're trying to lure travelers to come here is counterproductive. And the crazy thing is, as someone, like I said, I live in the French Quarter, I don't feel the danger.
Exactly.
And if you drive your car, you probably don't feel the danger either, but we all know there's a risk of a car accident.
Of course.
There's the odds, there's a lot of people, there's things happening, things out of your control. Similarly, if you're walking in the city of New Orleans or New York City or any other city, and whenever they do the crime data, here's a little tip for pushbacks, they always look at the crime data for New Orleans based on the number of residents of New Orleans. But as we know, the number of people in New Orleans, if we're going to start doing percentages, inflates by how much. I mean, on a given weekend, there might be, 1 million people in New Orleans.
Exactly.
And so if you're going to start doing this many crimes divided by this many people or whatever, you should do it by the inflation of people. Because in Bogalusa, they don't triple their freaking size on a weekend.
Every day we probably double our size because of the folks that come in from Metairie and St. Tammany and those places to come work and then leave to go back to their enclaves. So.
So the numbers are always twisted. The reality is, just like plane crashes and car crashes, the odds are there something's going to happen. But if you really were to go in on a plane crash and make it news every single day all the time, and show the gory crash site, well, you're going to make people scared to fly planes, even though, as we know, it's so safe.
We can't legislate based on one situation. Because one thing I give all praise to D.A. Williams, because the man has a vision. And just because one incident that may shock the conscious occurs, and even if that one incident actually personally happens to him, I'm pretty sure that man will stay the course. Because we stayed the course for 35 plus years with policies that did not work. Policies that just locked up people and ruined families and ruined lives that did not work. So why should we not stay the course for policies to be regenerative and renewative to our citizens?
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. I was listening to him on the news, and that's his mom, right? He had sort of every right to lose it on people and be like, this is my mama, and who knows what, right? Because we're all human, we're emotional people, and for him to stick with his principles and realize that he's trying to help New Orleans, and these kids obviously, or guys, whatever, I don't know the situation, but they were in that hopeless scenario, and just like you said, if it was just about violence, the two of them would be maybe dead on the sidewalk and they would have walked away.
Right.
But it was about taking a Lincoln Navigator or whatever it was for some reason, because maybe they thought they could chop shop it or who knows what, right? And it's we have to acknowledge the poverty that people are living in,
Right.
and the desperation, and people just saying, like, we'll just get a job at Popeyes. And it's like, well, you know what? Maybe getting $180 a week after your taxes get out from Popeyes is not really cutting it.
Exactly. And that's why we need to raise our minimum wage as well, and just kind of create new programs. Because I always think about this, and I'm going to talk to one of my buddies at RTA to see if this is plausible or not. But we have like these good paying jobs like in St. Charles Parish. Why don't we have a system with RTA where, you know what, we can get a bunch of our young men and women that want to go to where you can get $25, $30 an hour just for waving a flag on a construction site, get them to those jobs and get them back home, you know, in a reasonable time frame, so that that program can kind of pay for itself, and that, you know what, they would have to pay back into the program after they're able to kind of get their own cars and vehicles and stuff like that, to be able to pay for the next group that wants to, you know, kind of come up economically.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm just kind of spitballing, but you know, we gotta be creative to get our folks out of this economic desperation.
And there's no reason why we can't have a commuter rail between New Orleans and the airport and spots in between in Baton Rouge that is going to be environmentally friendly, you know, and you could probably solar the whole rail, and you don't even have to, like, you know, be using other electricity set the sun. And then, just like you said, people can kind of get in and out of different areas. And then, of course, if you're getting a $9 Uber from your stop-off point, it's a lot different than a $60 Uber from where you began.
Exactly.
And then all the transportation that's going between, you know, New Orleans and the airport could be cut down, like, massively by creating that kind of rail. That's one of my fantasies, you know. Go be fruitful, go with it if you can, you know. But that, and also I just feel like, you know, the streetcar could be solared in the city.
Yeah, we get enough sun
electricity
every day for about 8 months out of the year. So
we could solar this whole city, and it could be a proof of concept for people of, like, can you solar a city? Well, why not start here?
That's right.
And, you know, Entergy wants to take some more money out of our pocket to reinforce the grid that they should have been doing over the last 30 years or whatever.
Exactly.
Well, heck with them. Let's move on and solar the grid for probably less money, and then it pays off like in 100-fold over time.
That's right. We have to think about creative and ingenious, just kind of solutions to the problems that we have as a society. So we got to bring all tables to all ideas to the table and just hash them out and see what works.
So is there anyone in Baton Rouge or representatives that go to Baton Rouge who, you know, you consider to be maybe a mentor, someone you're going to lean on, someone that, you know, you're going to, you know, use as a resource?
Definitely. Representative Jason Hughes. Okay. And I've known him since I was an intern in Governor Blanco's office, because he was an intern probably for a year before I became an intern. And he just kind of showed me the ropes while I was in the governor's office. And now he's been a state representative. I think he's going to be going into his second term. Yeah, second term right now. So he will definitely be somebody that I'll look at, because he fought valiantly for those anti-LGBTQ plus bills, like valiantly fought against them. And like, I just love the stances that he takes. And, you know, he gets a lot of flack from that and from certain parts of the community. But you know what? He's steadfast in his belief and that all humans deserve respect.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not willing to represent all the people, even the people that voted against us, then what are we doing representing the district?
That's right.
You know, so how about, like, different, you mentioned you've been in, like, the housing finance agency, you've worked in education, you like, are there people in some of those agencies that you're still cool with that, you know, can help fuel some of your work?
My guy, Joshua Hollins, he was president of it used to be LHFA, but now it's the Louisiana Housing Corporation. But he just left because, you know, as well, basically every time an administration is ending, everybody kind of grabs their parachutes and gets out. So he just left to go to the private sector. So there's going to be some changeover there, and also at the Louisiana Board of Regents. Even though I do know she is a mentor of mine, Dr. Kim Hunter Reed. She is president of the Board of Regents, but I'm sure she's going to be leaving as well with the change in administration. So there's going to be some folks that I can still lean on up there, but most of them were in the executive positions, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of transitioning in those positions.
And are there any agencies, because just like you mentioned, the Land Administration will be appointing various people across the state. Are there agencies that you think, regular folks that live in New Orleans, people we've talked about, like housing issues or criminal justice issues, are there some agencies that we should be taking super careful, close look at who gets appointed and maybe a direction that they take?
Definitely Department of Social Services, because unfortunately, a lot of Republican ideology is to reduce funding for those type of agencies, and we need to make sure that those funds are actually increased for them, because once again, it's about being a decent human being, and we have to make sure that we're actually taking care of folks when they're at their most vulnerable. So we don't need to be cutting funds to Department of Social Services and also the Louisiana Housing Corporation as well. We need to make sure that there is affordable housing for each and every one of our citizens, and also for our returning citizens that are coming home from behind the wall. We need to make sure that there is good housing for them as well, because once again, we can't keep creating situations where people become desperate. And if I get out of a situation where I was behind the wall and I can't even find housing, what do you expect me to do?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we should be thinking about trying to implement is, you and I right now, we could get on the internet like that. We have phones. This building is wired. We could whip out a laptop. And, for other folks, maybe they can go to the library. You have access to the internet all the time. And we know how many things we can do on the internet, whether it's like establishing an account or learning or going to school remotely or whatever. And we've got, right now about 26,000 people who are incarcerated in state prison, more people who are doing local jail time, and they don't have access to the internet. And so the phone calls are crazy expensive.
Right.
And that can be a good way of keeping families connected. But again, you're not able to do that extra like learning. And so we're warehousing folks for months, years, decades even, and having no real opportunity to kind of connect and build themselves in some way and network and get educated. And then to let them go.
Right. And I did see that Volt did try to get past a bill to make phone calls and video calls free. So hopefully I can try to advocate for that in the next legislative session. But you're right. And we just have to be, it's selfish. We have to be selfish. And why I'm saying that is because if I want my mother to be safe, if we want the DA's mother to be safe, we have to be selfish and say, you know what? Because I want that, I want to invest in our brothers and sisters that are behind the wall to make sure that they come out fully whole human beings, restored, and that they're ready as soon as they walk out of those doors to be productive humans, to be productive members of our society. So let's not think about it as, we're giving those people all this kind of money. No, think about the investment that we're making for ourselves and our society.
I fully agree with that, and I try to make that point, whenever I can. And I think about that in terms, I have a daughter who's in high school, and I have an interest in all the kids that she goes to school with being in healthy homes, having food on the table, having stability, having parents that, at least one parent, if not two, who aren't struggling with addiction or, having their door kicked in because someone said that they may not have citizenship or something like that. So my daughter is safer when her surroundings is safer.
Exactly.
And I think that people that maybe they think they live in a gated community, they think those gates matter, they think their kids go to a private school, they think that barrier matters. And then they want to go to a wedding in New Orleans and complain about the crime. Right.
And that's the thing about New Orleans, like everybody intermingles. The races intermingle, the economic stratas intermingle. So we're all literally just a hand reach away from good or bad in this city. So we got to try to ameliorate and try to create ways to, push down the bad, to make this city more livable. And that comes through creating economic opportunity equally for all of our citizens.
And that brings me to just sort of like I think the last area I definitely wanted to touch on was education. And as you know, New Orleans has had the full charter experiment, right? And some charters are maybe the sort of the concept of, hey, we're a community, we're going to kind of start our own school or whatever, or we're specific about the type of education we're giving, the style of education we're giving. And then other charters are kind of like the McDonald's cookie cutter, like corporate system that resemble jails,
right?
That have people making hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have shareholders, sending money to who knows where. And it seems that our state is heading towards this concept of parents get some sort of credit to send their kid, whether it be a religious school or a art school or whatever. And based on what we know from New Orleans and these sort of cookie cutter charter style, what do we have to say to the rest of the state as it kind of transitions into this like all private, all charter kind of approach?
Yeah, my first time even becoming aware of charter schools was when I was working with U.S. Senator Landrieu, and I heard about Teach for America. And I was just really puzzled by that model, like folks who aren't even from the community just coming in
fresh out of college.
For 2 years and then getting their loans forgiven. Like, will those people actually have a passion for our children? So being a child that actually went to New Orleans public schools my entire life, from McDonald 31, which is right across the street from my house, to Thurgood Marshall, to Warren Easton, to having a mother who actually worked in the New Orleans public school system as well. I'm perplexed by the current system that we do have, because it shouldn't be about profits. It should be about educating our children. And we've had close to 20 years of this experiment, and we see that it's not working. So I always say this, and my wife always says, don't use that term, but I keep using it. We need to have real school choice. An entire system of charter schools is not choice. So we need to bring back our public school system. And I'm not saying throw out all the charter schools, but we need to have true competition in this city. Because right now with all charter schools, they don't have any competition, so they're able to do whatever they want. They're able to produce whatever they want. They're able to say that this A school, which is probably really a F school, is a great school. And we know it's not, because we have seen the results. So we have to have true choice. And that means bringing back our New Orleans public school system.
Well, it's definitely a twist on the school choice thing. I appreciate you explaining that. And I agree, like, in the sense that, like, if, for instance, there was, 5, like traditional public high schools, if there was, 10 traditional public middle school, that kind of thing, would people choose, I want this school, and staffers, I want to work at this school, I want to build this thing? Because I bet if we were to look at the last, it was 18, 20 years of charter school profits, we'd be like, wow, all that added up, it's got to be $1 billion, if not more. Right. What could we have done with that $1 billion+ dollars? That got flowed into somebody's bank account somewhere, some corporate, New York City based or LA based, Virgin Islands based, like whatever.
Right.
And how, and bring it back and create the neighborhood school again.
And you know what? Me and you, we probably wouldn't be complaining right now if we saw good results.
Yeah,
But with
we'd
these
be like,
results,
oh, great job.
with
Wow,
these
it
results,
worked.
there's no way they deserve that type of money.
And the thing that kills me a lot is, as someone who's had their kid go from, elementary to middle to high school and had to sort of apply to different things and send various things to do. There's no like centralized, even just like immunization records.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that not just part of the school system? Or why do I have to send grades from one school to the other school?
Right.
Why is it not just to have a repository? And then proving, she applied to NOCA and Ben Franklin, right? And I had to prove residency. I'm like, we've been residents this whole time. Like,
Right.
why do I got to prove residency all over again and for 2 different schools?
Mm-hmm.
And so you got all these parents that are going all the way across town, or kids that are on buses like forever, rather than going like locally. So even just like the logistics, never mind the education,
Right.
the logistics are messed up by not having a centralized sort of school board that has any kind of power.
Right. Because even I think about the young kids in my neighborhood who live on my block, and I see them up at 6:30 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to catch a bus to the Bywater area,
Mm-hmm.
one of the KIPP schools, and I'm like, there's this used to be perfectly good school where I went to elementary school at, right here,
Yeah.
but now that's high priced apartments.
Yeah. And the Homer Plessy school in the quarter that they're closing for repairs, it may go kicking and screaming, but a lot of people are like, it's going to go into high price apartments. And a lot of folks, even those of us that live in the quarter, like my daughter went to that school in the quarter. And that school has a long history. And to be able to say that you went in your neighborhood kind of matters. Just as you're talking about, I grew up in this district. Here I am, want to be a representative of this district. I went to school in this district.
Right.
What if you'd grown up going to all these different KIPP schools all over the city or whatever?
And that doesn't create a sense of community. It doesn't create a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm fortunate in that, I was, like I said, able to go to all these schools within the district. So I literally know, I can't even say I know the district like the back of my hand. I know the place that I live like the back of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the neighbors that you grew up with went to the same school with you.
Exactly.
And so you could take those friendships, take that community outside the school, rather than having your friends from all over the city, West Bank, the East, whatever. And, my daughter happens to go to an art school where people come from all over the place, so it's a little bit different. But even when she was going to Plessy Middle School, there were kids from all over the place going there. It just never made any much sense to me as a parent. Like, how is this going to work in the long run? And clearly it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having that perspective. And, if you get elected, early voting starts November 2nd.
Right.
Yeah. And the election is on November 18th.
Yes.
And you did well in the primary. Turnout was bad across the city.
Abysmal. And we need to, I think people don't feel represented by their politicians. Mm-hmm. And that creates a sense of apathy. Mm-hmm. So that's why, why I consciously present the way that I do. I'm no better than any one of the voters that's in my district. Mm-hmm. I had a few lucky breaks. I worked hard to get from the experience that I had to the experience that I'm having now. Mm-hmm. But I'm just like one of them. So hopefully that inspires folks to say, you know what, this guy is one of us. Let's go out there and vote for him.
Yeah, and there's always some, how do I want to put this, shenanigans every election, everywhere, every district. Are you concerned about any? And this is not even a slight on your opponent at all. But are you concerned about any kind of shenanigans or added sort of pressures either for or against you?
Honestly, no. My opponent, we've been very cordial throughout this whole process. So she's a very nice person. I honor her service that she's had in the military. So we haven't been like that. No.
That's
So
good.
I think we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I've seen some contentious races throughout, New Orleans, but we don't have that kind of.
Well, sometimes it's not even the candidates, right? Sometimes it's people that want to see their support or control a certain candidate. They're like, this is our person, this is our lady, this is our guy, right? And then they're doing some behind the scenes stuff. And, people that know us know that, like, we've put out some strong pieces on people sometimes. And, for us, it's about being the truth tellers and not wanting folks to kind of sneak their way in through the back door with, like, lies and smoke screens.
The truth is not a slander.
Yeah.
The truth is the truth. You could say, hey, that's Shaun Mean. He's lived in the district his whole life. Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I can't be mad if you say something about me that's true, or that I actually did, or that I actually said. Yeah,
and times we've had sort of pushback on our truth, and it's like, you know what? No one's ever taken us to court and said we slandered them or libeled them, and they usually end up talking about other stuff. Like, I say something about your record, whatever, you want to be a judge, you've never had a trial, and then you turn around and say something about, like, my past.
Right.
It's like, well, were we talking about your record as candidate, or are you talking about, like, you're just trying to throw mud back? And then people are like, oh, there's both sides. It's like, no, let's talk about the record.
Right.
So, but yeah, I appreciate you and Tammy Savoy being cordial, and, hopefully we can have a really good, fair election. Yeah. Of course, it'll be fair. I don't mean to imply anything.
January you 6th. One of those Trumpers now.
But no, I mean, we always want these things to be a competition of ideas, and and sometimes people share similar ideas, and then it just becomes more of a preference about how you think someone might carry those ideas.
Exactly.
So, but I definitely appreciate you coming. But is there anything else that you want to share with the people?
You know what? Just that I truly have a passion for this district. My wife is here. My 2-year-old is here. My 70-year-old mother is here in District 23. So, like, this is my home. And that's why I'm running, because I truly believe with my policy experience and my communal knowledge that I'm the best suited candidate for this new House seat. So, and also my background as well. We have a very large Hispanic population throughout this district. And both of my parents being from Honduras, I truly do understand the issues that our immigrant population has as well. So it's all these things that I have a sensitivity to because I have lived them personally. So that's really my pitch.
All right, si se puede.
Si se puede.
Thank you very much for coming through.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
This is Change the Change, and we out until the next episode.
Peace.